Welcome back to One Comic Book a Day, where we're covering the final story in Superboy issue 21, One Dozen Superboys, which is a misleading title for a misleading story. It's incredibly contrived, and it focuses way too much on a mystery that you're not even aware is happening, that in a way the ending feels like it comes out of nowhere. It doesn't come out of nowhere. I want to make that very clear. They do one panel early on to set up what the ending is, but you got to do more work without that feeling like it's coming out of nowhere as a surprise. I think the story would have been stronger if the mystery had been something that had been ongoing, for us to be aware that the mystery was happening. When the ending comes up, it ends up feeling like an unfair game. Like a mystery is supposed to be something that's solved, not kept from the audience, so you could do something surprising. You want that to be surprising to the characters and specifically us, the audience. And if you can't surprise us, you surprise the characters. That's how mysteries are supposed to work. But if we don't know if the story is a mystery, then how effective is that going to be at the end? Instead, I'm just like, wait, what is happening? Superboy saves a kid from nearly being hit by a trolley, but he does it in a way no one ends up seeing, so everyone believes this kid who has disappeared, not nefariously, just ran away after it happened, is a new Superboy, which has led to a problem with kids across the world thinking they might be Superboys. Like there's a whole spontaneous group of superhero kids across the world. Mostly they're doing stupid stuff like jumping off buildings to prove they have superpowers. So Superboy has to run around, and that's what a lot of the story is. Him saving other kids from themselves, or like a parent or guardian forcing them to jump off things. So that is a huge part of the story, which doesn't sound particularly all that interesting, unless all these stunts are being done simultaneously and he has to rush across the world to save them. But, like, okay, what are we going to do with that? And I mentioned there is a mystery, huh? Well, Superboy comes up with a better solution by creating his own little test facility where no one's going to be hurt, so they can, like, test their strength and invulnerability without being in direct danger, until he finds the kid in question and ends up being the original trolley kid who is an orphan. And at his unveiling, where superpowers show up, this professor jumps up believing it to be his kid. Now, this professor has been referenced in the story. When the whole news broke about a possible Superboy shows up in Washington, D.C. to talk to some government guys, apologizing about not finding this missing professor because he has to deal with this now. That is the only reference to this professor from any point in the story. And then he shows up at the end. So that is the amount of work they put into this mystery. Because you see, all of this is fake. Superboy just took the chance to bring out the professor. You see, this professor has invented something that could end a lot of diseases. It would do mass good. But the experiment led to the death of his son. So Superboy had to come up with a way for him to show back up by making him think the orphan is his son? Okay, that's a horrible thing to pull, Superboy. And you can see how this is really contrived. And maybe if we had, like, focused on us knowing that the kid was part of some sort of trap for the professor. Because the story ends up legitimately being about the professor, but 95% of the story is not about the professor. It's secretly about the professor, but it's not about the professor. They tried to make this a huge surprise by just throwing him out in a weird random part of dialogue that you are able to follow is like, okay, that it has to be important. There's a missing professor, because why else are they telling me this? They don't have a lot of time to tell these stories, and they don't usually just bring up random things. So instead of, like, clarity and a stronger story being told, we are left aghast by them deciding to keep it as a mystery. It's just really annoying way to write that story, because it's hard to care unless you give us a reason to care, and you forgot to actually have him in the story until the end. There is a happy ending. He adopts the kid, though he's basically been gaslighted into believing that the kid is his in the first place, so he just feels bad about the whole thing. It's a really massive mind manipulation by Superboy. It's really awful, actually, what he pulls here the more I think about it. But we need to really focus on stories being about things, and being about the things that the climax deals with. You can't just shove stuff in there and think like, whoa, we've all been surprised. Yeah, you didn't have it in the story, so of course I'm surprised. Okay, that is it from Superboy issue 21, One Dozen Superboys. That was a misleading title. There wasn't really a 1 dozen Superboys. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications when a new video goes up. I do this Monday through Friday, but Fridays is Bat Friday, where we cover a Batman story, either Detective Comics or Batman. And until next time, let's ponder the question, remember, it did happen to the boy of tomorrow. I wonder what happened with all this curing disease invention that the professor created. I bet it never is brought up again. Okay, have a great day.